I was in the school when, in the year 2011, I was watching Oscars, and I still remember James Franco and Anne Hathaway were hosting it. It was officially called the worst Oscar ceremony in history. And honestly, I watched it when I was in 10th grade. That's 2011. I had no idea about what the show entails. And the only thing that I could think of was, okay, why exactly are there no performances happening uh, in this ceremony? And that ceremony is really long. It's like 3 to 4 hours long, and it really put me to sleep. But that is how my love for the films started. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Deepansh Duggal. I have been professionally reviewing films and television shows for the last 3 years, and prior to that, I have been a journalist where I have worked for various Indian publications. And today, I'm here to share my story of what it's like to be a film critic in India. Spoiler alert: it's not that great. So, if you are someone who is just starting out as a film critic, if you are keen on making a name for yourself, this video will scare you, but it will also prepare you for more what might come your way. And honestly, I'm not going to hold back while sharing painful and some just how painful and horrible some of these experiences have been. Again, I am going to preface this with the fact that the purpose of this video is not to derail any individual or any organization. Just share some of my experiences that I've been holding on for a long time, and yeah, that's about it. So before I get into this video, my number one question that I want to ask every aspiring film critic is why? Why do you want to do this to yourself? And after 7 years of being in this field, I've realized a very harsh truth which I wish I knew earlier. Follow your passion is a bullshit advice, and I've never seen any any advice wreak as much havoc as this particular pearl of wisdom has. So allow me to explain why I feel that way. I honestly think that the purpose of an individual in life should be to just get a job that they can halfway tolerate and a job that they are halfway good at. Following your passion can be problematic at times, and that is what I did, and I bore the brunt of it. So it was the year 2022, and I was fresh out of my, a full time stint in, journalism. And I had worked prior to this with various renowned, well known publications. And in 2022, I had a very scary health diagnosis where I was diagnosed with pneumonia, and the infection in my lungs, it spread to my blood, which because of which I was basically incapacitated and I could not move, and I was struggling with high fever, and I had just realized at that point that it will be increasingly difficult for me to continue working full time in an office, and that is when I decided to switch to freelancing. Now, this choice that was made was not really a choice. I had no option because I was physically not capable of working in an office. Nevertheless, that choice was made, and this happened in the year 2022, somewhere around May or June. And that is when I started writing for a well known publication that covers films. And to my surprise, my work was being noticed, and all was going fine until crisis hit. And that was when this publication decided to slash the rates that they were offering me by half. Now, this information came well before they actually took the call, so it was entirely fair on their part. And I also deliberated and thought about the idea of whether should I continue writing, should I stop it. And by the way, this publication, it like I was writing regularly for them, and I knew for a fact that the views that they were getting as a result of my pieces were really good. So for those of you who are not familiar with how digital journalism works, every article that you write gets a certain amount of page views. There are UVs, which are unique page views. There are PVs, which are essentially page views. And every publication has a target that they have to fulfill in terms of these UVs and PVs. So I knew for a fact that I was getting them good numbers because I could actually see them post Instagram stories on their official handle about where they would mention top five writers from each section, and I knew for a fact that some of my stories were ranking better than some of the employees who were working internally and some of the employees who were working there full time. And it was all going well until they decided to slash the rates, and I respectfully refused their offer. I felt that I should continue to respect my work and the value that I bring to the table, and that was it. It was all fine. Now, a few days later, I receive a mail from the editor of this publication who says that we thought about it, and after a lot of discussions, we have decided to increase your rates by I think 1,000 rupees or something, and I was okay with it. I was like, let me think about it. But the next line of that mail, you guys, it when I think about it, it makes me go insane. So the next line of the mail said that you as in like me, you won't be getting the full payment of your last invoice. Guys, the last invoice, the amount in that invoice was rupees 1,80,000. And I freaked out. For a second, I didn't even know what was happening. And mind you, I had been writing for this publication for the last 2 months, so this came as a surprise to me because the month before that, they were very diligent and very professional in clearing my payments. So this particular mail that I received, it literally, I was like, what is even happening? And then I wrote back and I said, and I quote, I am going to pursue legal action against you for non-payment, if just in case you are deciding to get away with, just in case you have any idea in your mind that you can get away with this, because you cannot, and I will not let you get away with this. Now, some of my background is really important. I'm an only child. I have been brought up by a single mother. I have absolutely no generational wealth, and the only means of survival for the last 7 years has been working in journalism. So those of you who work in journalism know just how bad the money in the field is. So, I mean, there's no point in saying that I could not have afforded a legal team. But the fact that they went as far as saying that they would not clear the invoice, it really sent me, you know, into a breakdown, and I did not know what to do. I started frantically messaging a few of the friends who I knew, if just to check with them if they could help me, with a solution to this problem. And I wrote them back and I said that, listen, this is not done. And I got a response from an editor who was a higher up, in the position to this particular editor that I was working with. And this person says that, you know what, we are going to pay you, and you don't have to worry about it. And then I followed it up with, but then why did you write you wouldn't pay me? It's on the mail. And, guys, for all practical purposes, mails are important. It's official. So there was a lot of back and forth on this, and I was repeatedly assured that the payment is going to come through. And eventually, 10 days passed, 15 days passed, I did not get the payment. And that was when I absolutely lost it. I wrote a very angry mail in a lot of, the language was such, I was like, listen, I don't want to do this, but if you want to go down this way, I am game. Please go ahead, but this is something that's absolutely not going to work for me. And the senior editor who was in the position wrote back on that mail, you will get your money. Stop badgering us and stop threatening us legally. And these legal threats are no longer going to work. And at that moment, you guys, I had entirely lost it. And just to give you some context, like I told you, I was struggling with my health at that time. So the way you see me sitting right now, I was on this very bed and I was rotting. Like I wasn't well. And just a few days later, I had a PET scan scheduled. So for those of you who don't know, PET scan is used to detect cancer. And the doctor who I was visiting, was my general physician. He said that there are only two possibilities at this point. Either you have an autoimmune condition which is causing you repeated fevers. The second possibility, he said, was that it's cancer. So in order to rule out cancer, he actually put me through a PET scan. So you can imagine just how nerve-wracking that process was. And for me to go through this process just when all of this tamasha was happening was, thankfully, a few days later, the payment came in, and believe you me, I was relieved. And then I went through the scan, and the scan was absolutely normal. So it was just an autoimmune disease that I that was essentially diagnosed, and it led to a lot of fever and a lot of body pain, which also I've thankfully recovered from. Uh, so it was all fun and games, and then eventually this editor who's senior in the position gave me a call, and we decided to renegotiate the rates, and we continued from there on. I continued contributing articles to this publication for around 4 to 5 months, and around the 6 month mark is when I sent a pitch. This pitch was essentially an article which I was supposed to write on an Oscar nominated film, and this film was nominated in the international category. It was an Argentinian film, and there was essentially, so how I send pitches as a freelance writer is that I would often uh, you know uh, think of a headline, and I would write the headline in the subject mail, and I would send this email to the editor. So the editor didn't approve the pitch, and off late I was noticing that the editor, they were being very selective and picky of the pitches that I was sending them, which is all right. That's their call. I can't make them say yes when they don't want to. So that happened, and then after sending this pitch, I sent it at night, and I woke up the next morning and I saw an article. The same article was assigned to an internal staffer, and the headline that I had given in the subject line, the exact same headline was copy pasted, and the byline of in that article was not given to me. It was, I mean, of course, why will it be given to me? Because it was never commissioned to me, but it was given to another writer who's an internal staffer. I was absolutely livid. I was like, how can this editor do something like this? And if they're doing something like this, they better own up to this bullshit and take some accountability. So the first thing that I did was I immediately decided to take some screenshots. I took a screenshot of my mail. Of course, I still have it saved in case I need it in the future. And then I took a screenshot of the article. I wrote a mail to the editor, and so there are two editors. There is one editor who looks after the session, and then there's after the section, that's the entertainment section, and then there's another editor who is senior to this person. I wrote a mail, and I pasted both the screenshots. I said, "Do you have anything to say here?" And I kid you not, the entertainment editor wrote back saying, "Your idea is not unique. Everybody is covering the film in the same language." And I was shocked. And obviously, I wanted to follow up with a question. I was like, listen, how do you explain the headline being the same word for word? And I immediately opened the link to that article, and I was shocked. The headline was edited, and there was a question mark that was put at the end of it. And that was the time when I absolutely lost it. And mind you, this is an editor with whom I had a working relationship for months, right? And honestly, the writing was always on the wall that I'm being exploited, and I should have taken the hint when this publication refused to pay 1,80,000 to me. That was actually due. That was actually due to me, and honestly, it was obvious all this while that this is what they're going to do, and they did it. And I was absolutely livid. To the point, I wrote a very long, strongly worded email to this editor saying that I would not only would I no longer want to contribute to their publication, but at the same time, I feel that the creative bankruptcy that this publication struggles with shows in the section. The typos, the grammatical errors, and all the mistakes that they are making, it showed. And to my surprise, this editor writes back, and this editor says, uh, great, just don't contribute any story to us because anyway, your stories are not getting us numbers. And I said, listen, do you want me to send the screenshots of the stories that your Twitter handle shared, where I was, and I'm going inside the camera right now, where I was one of the top writers for several months? It's insane. It's insane. And honestly, the reason that I'm sharing this incident and I'm going into so much detail is to let all of you know that this is the kind of exploitation a lot of film critics, especially freelance film critics, go through. I have never had a full-time role with a publication, wherein I have had multiple full-time roles with multiple publications, but not a full-time role where I am, just writing for them and that is what I'm doing. No. Uh, I have had roles as a film critic in a freelance capacity. So for me to witness something like this, I was like, damn, like not only are you creatively bankrupt, not only are you stealing a freelancer's work, not only did you refuse to pay me for a money that was due to me, for an amount that was due to me, but now you're also stealing my work. And then you have cleverly put a question mark ahead of it, and that article with a different headline is still up. And I can't tell you just how livid this editor makes me, because this editor is hands down the most incompetent person that I know. And I'm not naming anybody here, but then if I were to, I have all the proof. And this was something that happened to me, and it kept me, and obviously, an incident like this would ruin anybody's mental health. I was up for like at least 3 to 4 nights where I didn't sleep. I'm not playing the victim here. It's very important to differentiate, but I'm obviously pointing out an experience of exploitation which is bound to have a certain kind of an impact on any journalist or any working professional's mental health, as it did. And what I'm trying to tell you here is that a lot of publications are going to exploit you. They are going to get money from the articles that you are writing, and they are going to get page views, and therefore, by effect, advertising money by your words. And they are not only going to underpay you, but they will also steal your work, and then they'll assign it to the internal staffers. So, for those of you who are trying to break into this business, number one advice that I would like to give you is that whenever you send a pitch to an editor, never reveal the full thing in the email. At least gauge interest, get a yes, get a no, or at the very least, wait it out, see where the conversation is heading. If they show absolutely no interest, please hold back the information, because it's entirely possible that they might as well just take the entire pitch, the entire idea that you are sending, and assign it to an internal staffer. Because onboarding a freelance contributor comes with its own set of challenges and a lot of red tapeism that is very typical in corporate in publications that have a corporate culture, which is essentially every publication today. So this was a traumatizing experience, and the sad part is that this was only the tip of the iceberg. I had two more experiences which really traumatized me to no end, and I'm going to talk about them in the upcoming sections. The second experience was equally traumatizing. I found a new publication shortly after I had a falling up with this particular publication. The editor was great there, but like all good things that start on a good note, sometimes they go sour, and they go sour only when there is an intention to harm, a person, to manipulate them, or to not give them their due. So anyway, before I get into all of this, let me just give you some context. I was not regularly writing for this publication, regularly as in, of course, I was writing regularly for them, but not on a weekly or on a daily basis as I was with the previous publication. So there comes a film that this editor wanted me to review, and so here is the distinction, and this distinction is very important because this is going to play a major role. So for any freelance critic, they write reviews. Right, reviews are essentially pieces where you are dissecting the themes, you are talking about the fact, like how would you want to rate that review, and then of course there is an essay. Now, how is a review different from an essay, and how, like, what are the things that define each of them is up for anybody's debate. A lot of people might feel that an essay is not very different from a review, but I think the editor from the get-go with me was clear that this is essentially what he's commissioning me is an essay, because they have already carried a review. And I quote the words that were used. He said that the essay, the review that we had was particularly critical, so we would want to quote unquote assuage that review. Now, at that point of time, of course, as I'm struggling financially now, I was struggling financially then, and as a rule of thumb, as a film critic, I would never want any editor to tell me what to write, right? So what I felt was that a lot of publications tend to do this, that they have a devil's advocate kind of a stance. So let's say if you write a piece that is extremely critical of a film, or for that matter any politician or any policy, a lot of times they have a different piece where you are just rebutting all the points that were made in the previous piece. So it's like it happens across publications, and that was my understanding, that he just wants, like, that there is a very fairly critical review that has already been carried, and now maybe I can bring out some of the positive aspects of the film, because I honestly believe even the worst made films have some aspects of them that really work. And that is what I wanted to bring out in the essay that I was planning to write. I said yes, and I started work on the essay. The essay was written, it was published, and then suddenly just shortly after that essay being published, it was taken down. And to my utter shock and surprise, I couldn't believe it. I was like, what just went wrong? I immediately called up the editor and I asked him, I said, the web page is showing a 404 error. So this editor very clearly told me that, uh, that he wanted something positive about the film, and he said that there are a lot of mature reviewers that write for this particular website, and he also said that it has been taken down because there were some issues, and he wanted me to rework the entire piece and write something positive, uh, you know about the film. And that was the part which really confused me. I was like, okay, a review is published and then it's taken down. Now obviously at this point I had entirely figured out that yes, of course there is some kind of a foul play situation, but at that point of time, I kid you not, I just needed my money, right? Because I had written an entire piece and I had worked on several drafts. It was published and then it was taken down. But at the same point of time, I did not want to sell my conscience either. And I was like, you know what? If he wants me to tone down the negative comments, that is something that I'd be up for. But writing a glowing piece, or writing an article which is gushing about the film, which honestly I didn't like. I didn't think it would be a credible move. In fact, I will be compromised in that situation. But then there was also a money factor involved where a lot of labor had gone in, and I was in my head questioning that if I were to refuse to make these changes in the piece, which was already published, and then it was taken down, there is a high probability that I will not only not get paid for the piece, but then the relationship with the editor might just go sour. And it did later on. But that was my thought process, because of which I agreed to tone down the comments. And even in the comments that I toned down, and I have all those drafts with me to date, I did not compromise on the some of the very strong opinions that I had on that film, which were not very that they were not very positive, and I did not want to let some of those lines go. So over the next week what followed was a lot of back and forth between me and this editor, where he asked me to tone down and edit, a lot of those, negative comments that I had written. And eventually it was on a weekend when he wrote back and said that, Dipansh, you are not going to use this piece. And जिसे कहते हैं ना हिंदी में, जिसका डर था मुझे कि होगा वही हुआ. And I wrote back to this editor and I said, listen, I understand you don't want to use the piece, but I really hope I'm going to get paid in full. And also, there were two other films coming up, and I wrote to this editor that, would you want me to review them? And I had already had a commission. This editor wrote back saying that not only can I not review the films which were already commissioned to me, these films were releasing over the course of next 2 weeks. He made it clear. He said that, listen, we can't pay you the full amount for this, right? Which was strange. And he said that the piece will not be published. तो जिसे कहते हैं ना हिंदी में, चोरी करना ऊपर से सीना जोरी. इट्स लाइक तुमने एक आर्टिकल मुझसे लिया, तुमने वो आर्टिकल पब्लिश किया, तुमने वो आर्टिकल हटा दिया, तो मैंने तुम्हें फ़ोन किया कि तुमने वो आर्टिकल क्यों हटाया, तुमने उसे मेल पर भी नहीं एक्सप्लेन किया कि why are you removing that article. I gave you a call and you said, and he did not know that call was being recorded, right? He said that, there are some issues because of which we had to take it down. Can you please re-edit it? And I think he was fully expecting me to just not edit that article, but I said, okay, I will edit it, because, well, I did not want to sell my conscience, and I never in a million years could have thought that this editor, who has in the past published a lot of pieces which were extremely critical of a lot of other films, why would he do something like this? Like, why would he? What sense does it make for him to, to just not publish something which is critical of this film? And I was really taken aback by this whole situation, and I was pretty sure that this is going to spiral. And I immediately went on Twitter and I called out this publication, this editor. I wrote a long thread, and the thread went viral. And also, as soon as the thread was written, this editor is so smart, you guys. He is, मतलब इस बंदे का दिमाग next level है. What he did was, he published the article, and he published it to discredit me, that see, this person is calling us out, but we have published his piece. And thankfully, the CMS, that's the content management system that a lot of publications use, it had a time, उस पर time लिखा हुआ था, that it was published after I put down that thread. So honestly, it was like a real-time documentation of how publications exploit freelancers. The thread got me a lot of support from a lot of people who I didn't even know on Twitter, a lot of peers, a lot of fellow journalists, and to my surprise, it also made its way to Reddit. And honestly speaking, in this below this thread, there was a reply that said something like, "अपनी writing की दुकान बंद कराने का तरीका बहुत casual है." And I honestly thought at that time कि by calling out a publication publicly, have I killed any chance of me getting commissioned in the future? Like, what are the odds that other editors might feel that, yeah, we don't want to work with this guy. This guy is extremely problematic. He goes around calling out people. And even right now, with this video that I'm making, I have this thought going in my head: why am I doing this? Why am I speaking about these incidents, a lot of which perhaps are already known? Why am I speaking about these incidents? And the purpose is, I did it because it was wrong. And there's this one reply that I saw to this very tweet कि अपनी writing की दुकान बंद कराने का तरीका बहुत casual है. There was a reply to this which said, अगर लड़ाइयाँ इतनी सस्ती होती तो हर कोई नहीं लड़ लेता. And honestly, I was like, and people who I didn't even know, people who had no business, they came out with pitchforks and they were like, how dare you exploit this writer? Because honestly, that thread was detailed. I had put out emails, and honestly, there were some people who also questioned me as to why did I even agree to write something positive in the first place. But anybody who has worked in this industry knows that if an article is published, if it's taken down, there's a risk of payment never coming through. And I did not want all of my efforts to go waste. At the same time, I did not want to compromise on my conscience. Had I edited that entire piece to make it read like, a celebratory article, I'm pretty sure the editor would have published it because he wanted an out and out positive piece. And this editor, by the way, interviewed the director as well as the writer of the film literally the same week where my piece was published. So after a lot of thinking about the fallout of this incident, I spent nights thinking about what could have happened backstage, because I'm a freelancer and I don't know what are the events that unfold in you know, in behind the scenes in a publication. And that is when it really hit me that most probably the article that I was being asked to write was a part of a barter deal, which perhaps, got this editor an interview with the director and the writer of the film. So I was being sacrificed कि चलो ये कुछ positive लिख देगा about a film for which nobody has anything positive to say. He would take the fall. And I even said yes, क्योंकि मेरे को तो पता नहीं था यार कि he wouldn't let me write a single negative thing about the film because he was never like that prior to this. And honestly, it was I think out of all the incidents I have already shared 2 incidents. The third incident I'm going to share right now. But the 2 incidents that I've already shared with you guys, this second incident destroyed my mental health like no other. Because it was huge. It went everywhere. I got calls, I got messages, and there were a lot of peers who I expected solidarity from. Not only did they not stand in solidarity, they were in fact very mean and very, they in fact tried to dismiss what had happened. And they even branded me an opportunist. And that is what brings me to the Film Critics Guild. I think it's extremely shameful that as a registered body of film critics, none of the people in the guild spoke up. I think a lot of them noticed. There was some, who reached out to me privately, but it was really surprising that, an incident of this level happens and nobody even cares. And that was the day that I realized an important lesson when it comes to working as a freelancer is that you are on your own. It's the loneliest job in the world. You have to look out for yourself because believe you me, nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to look out for you. And in fact, a lot of your peers might as well go as far as dismissing your lived experience of exploitation, which is what happened to me. And to this date, I get messages saying, Deepansh, what happened to you? And that particular incident was insane. It should not have happened to you. And I think I agree. So the truth about being a film critic in India is that not only is there not enough money for sustenance in this particular profession, there is rampant exploitation wherein your editors some of them might just exploit you. They might try to lowball you, give you a lower rate than the rate that you think you might. Some of them might even steal your intellectual property. They might pick up the headlines of certain pieces and assign it to the internal staffer. A lot of them might also be intimidated by just how good you are at your job. They might just be intimidated by how well you write. They might be intimidated of the expertise you bring to the table and the kind of numbers that you bring to the table. And when you call them out for being exploitative, they might as well gaslight you and turn the entire thing against you. And a lot of your peers might as well believe it because, well, they also are trying to survive in this cutthroat industry. All that I'm trying to say here is that if, despite all of this mental health ruining stuff, if you are still up for the challenge, welcome to the club. I think in the future I will be making some videos on how to break into film criticism, and this video will particularly be for working class writers, those who don't come from a place of privilege and who might not have access to the contacts of editors. How to get into this, how can you reach out to them, and at the same time, uh, you know, what is a good way to break into this industry, because as we all know, film criticism, like a lot of other creative industries, is very